It's a strange thing to say about what are essentially spy organizations, but MI6 and the CIA are actually pretty famous. They are household names thanks to characters like James Bond, the most famous MI6 agent, and movies like The Bourne Identity that focus on fictitious CIA operations. In this video, we're comparing the UK's MI6 versus the US's CIA to learn more about their histories, their purpose, and why the CIA building looks like a shopping mall while the MI6 building looks appropriately impressive and fit for an esteemed secret agency. Actually, we might not be able to answer that question entirely, but there's a spoiler on what's coming up. Let's briefly talk about who started these organizations and why. MI6, also known as the Secret Intelligence Service in the UK, began in the early 1900s. At the time, the British government was very concerned about a threat from Germany's imperial ambitions, according to the MI6 website, and they believed that there may be German spies targeting Britain. While this wasn't necessarily the case in full at the time, the Prime Minister ordered what was known as the Committee of Imperial Defense to do something about this perceived problem, and they established what was known as the Secret Service Bureau in July of 1909. The official title, Secret Intelligence Service, or SIS, was adopted around 1920. The name MI6 was adopted in the Second World War as it was Section 6 of military intelligence, and it's commonly used today, but it's not actually the official name. Across the pond, the CIA has its origins a little bit later in time, almost 40 years after MI6. During World War II, President Franklin D. Roosevelt was a little bit stressed out that all of the US foreign intelligence seemed to be kind of piecemeal and not organized. So he created what was called the Office of the Coordinator of Information, which was then very quickly changed into something called the Office of Strategic Services. This is the forerunner to the CIA and was the first centralized intelligence agency in American history. Then, 3 years later, the war ends and President Truman at the time was like, great, we don't need that in the same way anymore. Let's merge some offices in a temporary solution and eventually we'll figure all this out. So they moved some agencies and people around and create even more offshoot groups until finally Truman came to his senses and realized that America was going to need a permanent, fully functional intelligence organization. So in 1947, he signs the National Security Act, establishing the CIA, or Central Intelligence Agency. Speaking of security, the sponsor of today's video is all about helping you protect your personal security and information, not from MI6 or the CIA, but from data brokers. These are the internet's bad guys collecting and selling your personal information like your name, address, logins, location history, and a lot more. And it doesn't just lead to more spam in your inbox, so it definitely does, but much more serious problems like identity theft and a loss of control over your personal data, meaning you're open to data breaches, I can never remember which one I say, that could lead to far-reaching consequences, honestly, for your finances, your lifestyle, and your personal security. Incogni wants to help you erase your personal data from these data brokers' databases so they work for you, reaching out to the data brokers to get your information scrubbed from the internet. Whenever a new record pops up on a data broker site, they'll take care of it for you, which is especially important because many data brokers actually continue collecting your personal information even after they've removed it one time. I live a pretty public life online, as you know. Some things are easily searchable, like my name. I even have a book written under my real name, but that doesn't mean I want my other, more personal information like logins and addresses out there. I use Incogni to help me have peace of mind that scammers, data brokers, and other con artists like identity thieves don't have access to my information they could use to hurt me by doing things like taking out large loans in my name, raising my rates for services, or even using AI to mimic my voice to try and trick my family and friends into sending them money. Incogni have individual plans as well as family and friends plans of up to 4 people on one account, so you can keep your information safe together. You don't need to manually request any of the data takedowns. This smart automated system does it for you. If you want to try Incogni to take back your personal data, use code GIRLGONELONDON for a 60% discount on an annual plan. Now let's move on to the purpose of the CIA and MI6 because they are pretty similar. They deal with foreign security and intelligence and external threats. If you think of MI5 and the FBI as being spy catchers on home soil, then the CIA and MI6 are the spies abroad. Or, as the CIA puts it, their goal is to provide objective intelligence on foreign countries and global issues to the President, the National Security Council, and other policymakers, while MI6 says they have 3 core aims. 1. Stopping terrorism. 2. Disrupting the activity of hostile states. And 3. Giving the UK a cyber advantage. The CIA is just a little bit more involved than MI6 in operations on home soil, as it does have the National Resources Division, which is a domestic wing of the CIA. However, it is not allowed to collect information on US citizens, legal immigrants to the US, and US corporations, so really both organizations are externally focused. As to where the organizations sit within the overall structure of the country, MI6 is sitting under the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office in the UK. It is led by the Chief of the Secret Intelligence Service, who reports ultimately to the Foreign Secretary. The CIA is an independent agency within the US government, led by the Director of the CIA and ultimately reporting to the Director of National Intelligence. I also thought it would be fascinating to look at the source material for both agencies, because you could just log on to the CIA and MI6 website and see what they have to say for themselves. At first glance, the CIA website is much more intense than the MI6 website. The CIA website, even at first glance, is very stark. It's black and white, and it states, "We are the nation's first line of defense. We accomplish what others cannot accomplish and go where others cannot go." It's honestly one of the most American statements I've ever read. The MI6 website, on the other hand, is this wonderfully colorful map of the world with a bright layout and a tagline that says, "We work overseas to help make the UK a safer and more prosperous place." As you scroll down, the different styles continue, with the US talking about how they're the world's premier foreign intelligence agency and how they carry on the traditions of ingenuity, bravery, and quiet sacrifice. The MI6 site scrolls down to a much less threatening font than the CIA website, introducing themselves to the public and calling themselves creative and determined, ending with, "We're secretly just like you." Is this reflective of the cultural differences in the UK and USA, where the UK tends to downplay things and the US tends to brag about things? Possibly. Now, the MI6 building shown here has been made famous in the James Bond films, where it's depicted as the home base of the fictional secret services in the film. This building has been on this site since 1994, right alongside Vauxhall Bridge on the River Thames. For years, the SIS was at another building called Sentry House, which was an office block on Westminster Bridge Road. Its location was technically classified and supposed to be secret, but it was known as London's worst kept secret, and a 1985 survey determined that the building was incredibly insecure. Not only was it largely made of glass, but it also had a petrol station at the base. So the search for a new headquarters began, and it was approved by Margaret Thatcher in 1988. The windows are triple glazed for security, and large parts of the building are beneath street level, with plenty of underground corridors for security. If you've ever seen it in person, it's quite an imposing building. In contrast, the CIA has an old headquarters building, designed in the mid-1950s by architects who dreamed of a place where intelligence officers could work in a college, campus-like atmosphere. They obviously succeeded, as this genuinely does look like the library at the university I went to. By the early 1980s, the agency needed more room, so they built what is known as the new headquarters building. These are 2 6-story office towers behind the old one. This was completed in 1989, and this is the one that does make me laugh, because there is no difference between this photo and an American mall entrance. Like, if you showed me this without context, I would definitely think there is a food court and a shoe store inside. Maybe this is why the CIA website has to be more threatening, I don't know. So in terms of the size of the organization, the CIA is larger with more financial and technical resources. There are around 21,000 CIA agents and around 3,000 MI6 agents. However, MI6 has been operating for longer, and in many ways, due to the reach of the British Empire over the years, is generally seen as being more attuned than the CIA to the subtleties of world affairs. So a smaller budget and employment figures do not equal less experience. In terms of public perception, there is one major way they differ, and you may have your own opinions on this because you are the public and you have your perceptions, so feel free to share in the comments, but generally, MI6 is more shrouded in secrecy than the CIA. CIA. And what I mean by this is that MI6 tends to lean into the James Bond stereotype. It seems very happy to let people really wonder what it is they get up to. The CIA, while obviously being a foreign intelligence gathering agency, does have a higher public profile in terms of what is known and what they share about their activities and successes, which also leads to more public scrutiny over past missions and current tactics. One thing both agencies do have in common, though, is misconceptions about what it's like to work for either one of them. The first misconception is that agents cannot reveal that they are involved in the agency to anyone, not even their family. This is untrue. Both the CIA and MI6 state in their career section and on their websites that agents are allowed to share with their immediate family what they do. Typically, this is a spouse, and of course, this doesn't mean sharing classified information or what exactly they do all day at work. They aren't allowed to come home and say, honey, I just discovered a secret spy ring in the Middle East today with a list of locations, but they don't have to pretend to their husband or wife that they're a plumber. However, to people outside their immediate family, they do then just have to say they work for the government and be vague about it, sometimes making up a fake committee or operation. Even within the organizations, officers work under need to know policies where they're only given information that they need to know for their specific duties. They don't just get a handbook to the government's mini secrets upon joining. The second misconception that agencies share is really a misunderstanding of what life is like working for them. Hollywood has made it seem like these people are jumping off buildings, running into hostage situations, and encountering danger daily, and that's not true. Most roles within the organizations, while they are undercover and they are secret, can be relatively mundane and seem more like your average 9-to-5 than most people realize. In the US, if there is a hostage situation or direct action that needs to be taken, they'll call in what's known as Delta Force. They're a special operations unit in the US Army that specializes in counterterrorism. The CIA will gather, decipher, and find out the information, but much is behind a computer or in a nondescript way out and about in society. They don't see as many explosives as you would think after watching the movies, and the same goes for MI6. For the most part, their job is to gather information discreetly. If the military is needed, then they call them in. And finally, you should know that MI6 and the CIA do work together. Along with some other intelligence services around the world, they work on similar goals and share information that's needed between allied countries. Now that brings us to the end of this video. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.